Here at Be Freaking Awesome, we believe that life is too short to be anything less than extraordinary. Join us as we explore what it means to live authentically, grow continuously, and have a blast while doing it. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Be Freaking Awesome. I'm one of your hosts, Amy Kinnison, here with Angela Belford, and today we are going to be continuing our conversation with Omar. We're going to be talking more specifically about men's mental health. June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I think this conversation is really, really poignant and timely.
Yeah, and very really helpful in kind of the very practical steps that Omar gives to men on how they can go on their own journey. You know, we talk a lot about women here, and that is not to leave out men. And I think making the point that we do about how men are kind of in a change in our society of like the very traditional roles and the very traditional things that have served our society well are not going to serve it in this next iteration as we evolve as a society and as a race, you know, the human race. So it's very helpful, and I hope that everyone enjoys it.
Angela, I really like your perspective that you have shared before, sometimes on your healing journey, about the Indiana Jones leap of faith and your look
Mm,
back. Will you share that with us? I'm not going
sure.
to tell your story for you.
Yeah, I remember when I was, I find myself at 24 and at that season of transition. I already had two small children and really just didn't seem like I could go on. And I mean, I call it a nervous breakdown because if that wasn't it, then I don't ever want to get there. But um my desire was I just want to be I can remember, this is so funny. It's so 24-year-old of me to say I just want to be normal.
Mhm.
I'm tired of feeling so broken with my childhood, and I have gone to therapy twice to just solve a band-aid a problem. And I felt like I was literally, there's a scene in Indiana Jones where he's standing next to the chasm, and it looks like he's going to step off into um and fall down in the
Mhm.
chasm, and he has to
Mhm.
take a step, and then the bridge appears. And the rest of the story is I did cross the bridge and I
Mhm.
went to the other side and I went on my hero's journey. And what I found is that not many people cross that bridge at
Yes.
that point. And so I was faced with, oh, wow, now I'm really alone, because I'm looking back across the chasm going, oh, it turns out they all, oh, crap. And
Yep.
I feel like so much of my life, I've stood by that bridge and encouraged people to take that first step. Like when he, threw
The
the rocks
sand.
back, the
Mhm.
sand back, so that he
Mhm.
could see where it was. I feel like that has been my role in so many people's lives. Like, please just take the first step. I promise the view's great over here.
Yes.
Because it is super scary because we can't visualize. This is what's hard. And I am a huge believer in visualizing the
Mhm.
future that you want. I think people struggle with habits because they don't know where they're trying to get to,
Mhm.
and they don't have a clear understanding of what it is that they do want. And and when you're in that space where you're like, all I can tell you is I don't want this
Yes.
anymore. This confusion, this frustration, this what I have, but I don't even know what it will look like on the other side. I can read some books and I can hear what people talk about, but even in that it's fascinating because when I go back and reread Be Freaking Awesome, which you can download for free on angelabelford.com, that was published 8 years ago this year. And that means I wrote it 9 years ago this year. And I read it, and there are pieces where I'm like, "Oh my word, I talked about emotions.
Yeah.
I talked about feelings." And then when you read Traveling Light, I will talk about it like, "I've never thought of this before." And I'm like, "Okay, well, clearly you did,
Mhm.
but it just was at a deeper level." And so that is the challenge in that those moments of transition is that it does feel a little bit like we're going to step off into this just oblivion, And I think that's when community really becomes important. I think finding finding our people that are going to be
Yes.
like, it's worth it. It's here. We're going to be your safety net. We're going to be here, and I can see that they've been on the journey and that I can cross over safely.
Mhm.
Probably gonna, you're gonna get some skint knees. You're going to get some bruises, but you won't die. Tell your
Mhm.
brain that over and over again. You're not going to die. You're going to be okay.
Yeah. The beautiful thing that you said, right? And again, if I do some constructive criticism of society right now, right, it's the fact that we don't have enough models like you. There's not enough
Mm,
models out there that are actually explaining it just like you did. But what you mentioned is a model that understands the journey, and then holding the light for others to actually see that yes, it is not easy. It's challenging, not impossible. It's challenging, but it's so hard for us to go back to that childhood idea of using our imagination, right? Because what you're mentioning is quality that is innate as a human being,
mhm,
um, a quality to picture what is not there, right? Because if you really look around, like let's say for instance, a car was a concept in someone's mind before it became material. Somebody was dreaming about it, someone visualized it, and they didn't know exactly how it was going to work, but somehow they just started putting things together and it became a reality. Now we take it for granted, but it started in someone's mind. And one of the things that I used to do teaching young people, and guiding young people, I may say, is I always used to talk about goals and values, right? I have one young lady that calls me up, and she's older now in medical school. And she says to me, "Mr. Omar, I didn't realize, how important goals and values were, and I realized now that most people don't have them, right?" And I was like, "Oh, thank you for sharing. That means that that's one of the things that I've learned as a young person, that is important because you have to understand what drives you." Now, recently, I started asking this and understanding this one question, which actually gets a little bit metaphysical and nuts. But if you ask the question, "Who am I?" Right? That's a question that he will, if you follow it through, brings opens a lot, right? Because number one, are you really just the way that you look? Are you really just your culture? Are you really just the ideas that have been given to you? That's a reality that is really hard to accept what you really, really are, right? And the other analogy that I could say to kind of like equate it so that you could see the grandeur, how important we are, even when we feel insignificant, right? Is the sun, right? Nothing on earth works without the sun. The
mm.
sun is everything. We are it. And the way to arrive at that is really a word that we Americans hate, discipline.
Mm.
It really takes discipline. I mean, it really takes the consistency of getting up every morning, and that's the first thing that you're focusing on. What is it that I really want, right?
I have, because I embrace my neurodivergent brain that is on the spectrum, ADD for those that are not in that space. And I can tell you that an ADD brain, when they hear discipline, runs the other direction. And the thing that I have really embraced in the last few months, probably since I hung out at a conference for
Mhm.
those of us, is the idea of rhythm. Like, I'm
Mm,
going to establish the rhythm of my morning. And for me, it has been a lot more gentle of that process. Like, when I establish a rhythm and when I follow that rhythm, I don't know if it's because it makes it sound musical. I don't know if it's because but it literally feels like it speaks to the soul.
mhm,
And what I love about when you're talking about understanding who am I, we go back to the hero's journey of finding and accepting the shadow self
mhm,
as well as the self that is in the sun.
mhm,
And when we can really absolutely accept with so much love and joy those parts of us that we don't like that much.
Yes.
It is, to me, that is when I feel like the most enlightened, is when I can just come face to face with that part of me that I don't love. And there was a very cool uh, documentary about Joseph Campbell,
Hmm.
who is Joe, I think is what it's called. And in it, they're
Finding Joe.
like Finding Joe. Thank you.
Finding Joe. Yes.
And in it, they do this whole thing of like, we think we're supposed to slay the dragon, slay the dragon, slay the dragon. And I love the scene where they have this little kid like chasing the dragon, and then they take the mask off the dragon, and the dragon is ourselves. Right.
Yes.
And so that deep, dark part of us, that fear, we aren't here to slay the dragon. We aren't here to slay the fear. We're actually here to embrace it and to understand it and to accept it.
Hmm.
And I think what people hear when they hear, or at least I used to hear, "Oh, you want me to accept my shadow self," that means I'm going to be complacent and not try to
No.
evolve out of those parts and it is not. But we cannot begin to evolve those places of us and begin to iterate those places of us until
Hmm.
we accept it. As
Yep.
long as we're trying to fight it, and it's just this battle, we will not be able to.
Hmm.
And it's such a hard concept. We will, like, because I hear accept and I'm like, oh, I don't want to get stuck with this. I don't want to be stuck with this icky part of myself.
Yes.
Or even if it's not the icky part, but this part that I don't appreciate. I don't like how I treat my people
Hmm.
when I'm in this dark place. And sometimes it's not even out of our own stuff. Like, it's not even I care about my own depression and my own anxiety. It's that I don't want to treat my people
Hmm.
badly. That seems like a worthy goal. Yeah, and you got to accept that sometimes it is in fact true that sometimes I treat people badly. And so if I can love that part of me,
Yeah.
then I can begin to iterate.
This is the shadow concept, and I hear a lot of people talk about the shadow, right? And the shadow concept is something Carl Jung created.
Mhm.
I don't know if he created it, but it kind of came to him in
Named.
named,
Named
right?
it.
In
Mhm.
in but what when he was learning all the different cultures and understanding what the archetypes were, right? And I remember one of the Star Wars. People love Star Wars because it speaks to something different in our psyche, right? And by the way,
Mhm.
most people don't know that Joseph Campbell was in the hero's journey was really the reasons why
For
Lucas
sure.
finished Star Wars, right? So
Absolutely.
my favorite part of Star Wars is the Empire Strikes Back, when Luke goes and starts training with Yoda, and he gets this sense like what's in that cave, right? And he goes, only pain will you find there, right? So Luke goes in the cave, and who comes out? Vader comes out. But when he strikes Vader, who does he see in the mask? He sees himself,
Can I
right?
interrupt right here?
Mhm.
Because teenage Sammy, when she saw this, was like, I don't get it. I don't understand at all what's happening. How is that his what does this mean? What does this not?
Yes.
This is dumb. And then now I am like a huge Star Wars fan, but I do want to acknowledge my own growth and journey, that seeing that moment being like, that's confusing. I don't
Yes.
get it. And now I'm like, oh, the cave, it's him.
Hmm.
Oh, it's
Hmm.
beautiful. Anyway, so if you think it's dumb, that's okay. You're not alone. I once was there.
Yeah, no, and it is. I mean, it is because when you see it, it's like what are you talking about, right? And this is the beauty of art. Art is supposed to take
Mm,
us to a place so that we could ask questions, so that we could
right.
explore, right? And that's what was so good about that scene, because at that moment he realized, oh, I am Vader. I
Mhm.
have the potential to be Vader,
Hmm.
right? And from that point, his perspective about confronting Vader completely switched. It wasn't
Mhm.
about destroying anymore. It was about loving and accepting the pain, the suffering that others feel. So he saw in himself, which is ultimately really the goal of any spirituality, psychology, is to see ourselves in others, right?
Mhm.
Love thy neighbor as you would thyself. It's about seeing you, that child that doesn't know, that confusion, seeing the beauty in others and understanding that sometimes you understand things better than others, but it doesn't make you superior. It's about being there and holding presence. So the
Mhm.
shadow really is, it's this place, this idea of seeing yourself in the spectrum of all your polarities, and then finding the equilibrium within those forces, right? So like one of the things that I tell men, is I don't want you to stop your aggression, because aggression is something that is innate within men, right? It's one of our, if you put men in a box, aggression, protector, and this and that and the other, right? And it's okay to have those qualities. The idea is balancing it so you know exactly when to use it, when to put it away, and when to put it forward. And that's what needs to happen inside of us. We need to understand these energies, right? Acknowledge it, um, and then be able to make peace with them, but also know when to use them and when to not use them, you
Mhm.
know? And that's
Absolutely.
really the goal of spirituality, is understanding all these conflicting energies in your psyche, and the self being able to determine when it's time to use it and when it's not, but we teach all this stuff about escapism and all that. It's about
Mhm.
balancing, it's about understanding and putting it into action, because there's some moments, if you see someone in danger, I am yelling. I'm now going to be soft. I'm yelling. I'm going to go ahead and
Yeah.
pull you out. If it's going to affect you traumatically later on, that's okay, but your life is saved. At that moment,
Right.
you need that. And I grew up a Boy Scout, so I had to do that all the time. Sometimes I had just had to step in, because it was safety issues. So this the shadow is something, not like you said, it's treating it with love and acceptance and understanding, and telling it it's okay. I got
Can
this.
I want to shift us gears just a second,
Mhm,
because we have sort of danced around this a little bit, and the work that you do specifically with men, I think, is so important.
mhm,
And it would be remiss of us not to highlight that June is men's
mhm.
mental health awareness month. And I think that some people are like, this is an awareness month? Like, what the heck?
Yes.
And I'm like, yes, because men's mental health is one so unique. I think the problems that are being faced, particularly by today's men, not necessarily even 100 years ago men, but today's men today have such a hard go of it.
Mhm.
And I also want to clarify before we have this conversation, just because one person has a hard problem does not negate somebody else's hard problem. So we're not going to continue this conversation where we say, well, women have had it worse for XYZ, so men can't have real problems because of that. False dichotomy. All of us are messed up in different ways. So let's all
Yes.
just accept and embrace that it is
Mhm.
okay to bring the spotlight in different areas for moments. So I'm just going to take that one first. Sorry. Make sure everybody knows. But two, can you just, I don't know, expand upon maybe
Yeah.
some of your hopes for men as they sort of think about their own mental health? Maybe they've not looked inward or looked
Yeah.
at this before.
Let me paint the picture first, right? I work with an organization called Call to Men, Tony Porter, and he talks about the men's box, right? And the
Mhm.
men's box is what, when we traditionally define a man, this is what we say, you know, protector, leader, provider, and all this stuff, right? 1 out of 6 men before the age of 18 has been sexually abused in one way or
Mm.
another. 1 out of 6. And
That's
those are the
crazy.
numbers that we know that have been reported, right?
And we
Women is
know that there's underreporting.
correct, correct, right? And there's a book called Derek Jensen's A Language Older Than Words, in which he really depicts the trauma of sexual abuse in relationship to our culture, right? And he really paints the picture in a vivid way. But men right now are facing, number one, the crisis that model, that men's box, no longer fits our date and time.
Mhm.
It doesn't. It served us in the past, right? But we are caught up in that. Number two, number men are commit suicide at a higher rate than women right now, and the difference is women sometimes survive. Men are successful. When a
Mhm.
man decides to do it, it is done, right? So you have to deal with that reality too. What a lot of people are not realizing right now is, with automation, sorry, with AI, with all these things that are happening, those traditional jobs that men were used to was to do, which labor intensive and things like that. These things are going by the wayside because of our advancement in technology. So the question and the issue,
Cue
the
the existential crisis.
exactly, cue the existential crisis, because then you're looking at yourself and saying, what am I?
Now what?
Now what? Like, what do I do? Right. So a lot of the men that I work with are in that position. Number two, they're being labeled as bad parents, bad dads, and things of that nature. But I will tell you this: we just finished a program here in the Treasure Coast with Children's Services Council called a More Than a Game, and we brought them. The men come together to play basketball. But before that, we talk about men issues. What does it mean to be a good father? What does it mean to do all these different things? Right. And one of the things that I talked to them about first was understanding who am I as an individual. And I remember the first time I did this, they all came up with the stereotypical answers until one guy said, "You know what? I'm loving, I'm caring." And then all
Mm,
the other ones said, "You know what? I thought about that too, but I didn't want to say it in front of everybody."
mm,
Wow.
Right? Because we
yeah.
are all that. We are creative. Men have all these qualities in us, right? The challenge of our time is that we haven't truly let men know that this is a time for their heroic journey. What's
Mm,
next for them in terms of what is inside of me and what needs to come out? We have already established a society and a world in which labor it's not as important as it is to be. And this is some of the
Mm,
things I would teach when I work with men. This is what I talk about. Number one, how do you find joy? How do you define it for you? Because joy for me and fun for me is completely different than for you, right?
mhm,
mm,
And that goes back to the idea of the individual, right? Because there we have to start working with the individual so they could find those things inside of us so that we could create something different and something new. And we're not teaching that. So we teach education has to the origin of the word education has two names, right? One of them is putting in instruction, right? So
mhm.
we are instructing, and this is what our school system is. It's about instruction. The other part of education, educate, we don't do that, which is pull from within.
mhm,
It's
Mm,
finding what's inside of you. And this is what myth is for. This is so beautiful because this is myth, spirituality. It's bringing out what's inside of a person and actually putting it into practice in the here and now. This is why we're here. There were men and women that went inside, created something, and it's the evolution of us. Now we have to evolve into something different. And we have to
mhm.
teach men that it's okay to be sensitive, it's okay to feel things. It's okay to understand something's not right and I don't know what to do about it. Because now we could have the conversation. Okay, what do you see? What do you visualize? What is it that you would like to create? Because the new economy, if you're really thinking about it, I mean, and you hear, I know people are crazy, but he has a point. It's like we are getting to a point in which we're going to need a universal income because labor is falling and falling and falling. It's gone. If you look at the graph, we don't work as hard as we need to anymore, right? So what's going to happen? And I saw this on the news, and I feel so horrible for them. The longshoremen, um, they were picketing against automation at the ports.
Right.
And the reality of the fact is, like, most of the world's ports are all automated. And again, that's that existential crisis. Is like, what am I going to do if I don't have a job? Our society needs to step in and realize this is the danger that men are facing. you know you have there's all these jobs out there that no man wants to do, but we taught them that to go to college and do all these different things. Now they see, well, why am I going to do this since I spent all the money to do this?
right.
So we
I was
have to
having
really.
I was having this conversation with somebody this week, and he said that in he said 1980s, I would have been your biggest antagonist against a universal basic income. Like, absolutely not, never, no chance. He said, today I am so in support because of this very reason.
Mhm.
And his perspective, in particular, as it related to men, was if you can relieve that pressure to be the provider, to be the foundation, to be the safety net, to be all the things, can you imagine how much better that the world could be? That if
Hmm.
you could take that away to say, hey, you know what? That box is checked, and
Yes.
your worth and value is not determined by how well you take care of your family.
Hmm.
So, yes, we're gonna have to send you a little bit on a journey because you're gonna have to probably go through a little bit of crisis on like, well,
Hmm.
great, where is my worth and value come from then? Great, let's go answer that question.
Hmm.
But think of how much could happen. Think of how much fulfillment, how much art, how many medical diseases are going to be solved because
Yes.
somebody had that desire to be a scientist as a kid, but there was no real path. They couldn't figure out how to go about that experimentation. I don't know. There's so many things that um, I really think that men aren't given as much permission as women are to do things
Hmm.
sometimes. And there's a flip side of that as well. And there are definitely things that there's some glass ceilings that are hard to break through as women, but also, I was always told, go pursue everything. And
Hmm.
I think men do get told, go pursue manly things. Like being a stay at home dad, not necessarily a
No.
manly thing.
Hmm.
Being a nurse, being a caretaker of any
Hmm.
kind, nope, don't pursue those things.
Hmm.
Pursue a manly job and a
Yep.
masculine thing. And I think that that permission giving
Hmm.
almost, you talked about earlier not wanting to criticize society, and it is what it is. And golly, man, sometimes I get really mad at how society has really laid the cards out for men.
Yes.
And I can understand how we've arrived at this crisis. It does not give me the answers for like, okay, great, now what? Now how do we get out of this crisis for
Well,
these
and
men?
there
Yes.
are some men that have balked the society and had gone and become teachers. And I feel like our society is better because of it. When we have,
Mhm.
a guy that's there in the third grade classroom or is there in the seventh and eighth grade classrooms, that are providing that male leadership and that male role model, I think our society improves when men don't listen to, you're not allowed to do this thing, you're not allowed to do nursing, because there are so many things that we just bringing our individuality, not
Mhm.
just our gender, but just our individuality to these different types of roles, I think is fantastic.
Yeah. Some of the criticism that I've gotten as a myself, right? It's I've been called I'm too sensitive.
Mhm.
I'm too nice. Those are the things that, and it took a woman, Mindy Fetterman, who's the founder of the Inner Truth Project. She said, Omar, this is what we need. This is why you're here. Because the reality is, and it feels isolating a lot of the times, right? As a man. But again, it goes back to the individual. And this is what I focus on. Because to your point, in criticizing society as a whole is a big mechanism, right?
Right.
That is hard to shift. But the only way that it shifts is individuals taking action. It's individuals. So my focus it's always going to be in the individual. The
Right.
individual recognizing the fear, walking that path along the side with them, just lighting the way. Because if the individual doesn't realize, particularly men, and again, it goes to anybody, right?
Mhm.
If they don't understand the importance of who they are, and if they don't understand that they are the catalyst for change, not by imposing my will on them on someone, not by telling people how they should be and who they should be, but by really just living who they are. That is a hard concept because we don't have models anymore that tell us that. In ancient cultures, we have rituals that helped us understand this. Our society doesn't have any of that. We
Right.
don't really, even if I don't personally speaking, I'm just speaking for myself. I don't really think that we believe in religions anymore. We use it as a competitive advantage so that I could feel good about who I am. That's just my opinion. But if we really are able to allow people and create spaces, but this is really my job, my work, that what I do is I just really create a space to hold presence, to allow men to speak without judgment, right? And I tell them I work with men between the ages of 18 to 25 and all the way above. And I tell them I have three simple expectations. Number one, I statements. I don't want to hear what anybody else says. I want to hear from you. Like, what do you have to say? What do you feel? Like, if you think that it's crazy, it's not. I just want to hear it. Just tell me. I
Hmm.
had I was doing a group this week, and one of the guys there said, "It's like, you know what? I don't understand these people in power because they go to the bathroom and they sleep just like I do." And he's like, and I feel crazy thinking about that. And I'm like, that's not crazy at all. That's a fact,
Right.
right? And just allowing them, even if it feels like it's from a point of view, it's like, well, that's not educated or this and that. Create a space in which people could speak from themselves. This is what I feel. This is what I go through, right? Number one. Number two is really respect. And respect looks like this because sometimes we have to define what things look like, right?
Yeah.
Respect looks like this. When someone's speaking, no side conversations, no talking. And the reasons why is because they might say something that sparks something in you. And it's like, oh, I'm not alone, right? I'll give you an example real quick. I was having a conversation with the More Than a Game group, and we were talking about exes and and having parental rights with exes and fighting with your ex
Mm.
and all these issues, how challenging it is, right? And one of the guys was really upset about it. It's like, I don't understand why she keeps doing this and that and the other. I try to be communicate with her, but I just get upset and then we start yelling, right? And then another guy says, you know what I did? I just let go of my ego. And he was like, and I feel great because I started putting my pride aside and I started just listening and and doing this. And the relationship is just changed completely. But we have to create those spaces so we could allow ourselves to do that. And the last thing that I encourage people when you're creating spaces like that is um, what he said there stays there. Because you know how men and people are. Oh, look, you heard about this? Look at this dude. Look at that girl.
Right.
It's like keep it there. It's a sacred place for people to be. And the more you create places like that and you allow people to do things like that, it changes them. You know, I'm blessed and I'm thankful for it because all I do is I just ask questions. And then they think I'm a genius. And it's like, no, it's like, I'm just asking questions. It's like, it's you, you know? Uh,
I I think that those three things could also be applied. Somebody might first hear that and be like, "Oh, well, I'm not any type of mental health professional. I'm not bringing together groups of people." Do you have a group of guy friends? Because if you have a group of guy friends and you, number one, what is said there stays there. Number two, you're offering respect. And number
mhm,
three, you're engaging in I statements and you're telling them about yourself and what
yep.
you think and believe.
Mhm,
Can you imagine the types of friendships you're going to cultivate by keeping that even in a casual friend group setting?
mhm,
And I think that men experience loneliness because that model for friendship and how to open up and create a safe space and have
mhm.
those conversations, it's not apparent. Again,
No,
we have a lack of role models out there for the way that you can live more fulfilled. And so I think that those things, if you're hearing that and you wanted to be like, well, whatever, that's not for me. No, it absolutely is for
it
you.
is.
It's for you in any of the groups that you're in. And sure, maybe it adjusts a little bit, but finding ways that you can, and if you can't find that model, the best way forward is to lead it and become it and
Yes.
say, you know what? Maybe I'm going to be the first guy in the group to say, hey, you know what? It's hard. Can I just talk about it's hard to do this thing? And I am loving and kind and not
Mhm,
just strong and beefy and whatever. Like,
mhm.
you can step forward in that. There's risk, but there's also beauty and opportunity and reward.
And this is what I've found when men up and up with one another,
Hmm.
there is no judgment, believe it or not. I mean, I know that's the fear, that's the expectation, but that's not what I found at all. It is a
Right.
cohesiveness. It is like, oh my god, I could call this person. They build, the bonds are actually stronger. And again, it's like I tell guys, it's like, I'm not saying that, oh, let's sit around the circle and be kumbaya, because that's what you hear. Oh, well, I'm gonna just hold hands and sing kumbaya. It's like, no, it's about community. It's about having someone that has your back. It's not about weakness. It's not. It's about being able to say, I don't know what to do. Will you please just guide me? You know,
Or
and
Or
listen.
sit with me in that.
Sit with
that's
me.
it.
I was
That's
like,
it.
even if you don't know what to do either, at least I won't be not knowing by myself.
Yeah, and most guys, I'm telling you, I've seen it in different groups. I've done groups with young men who have been in trouble. I do groups with dads, and I do groups with all professionals. Professionals in their own car dealerships and all kinds of stuff, and they're just there for one another, because they
Mm.
see they need. And the reality that you don't see on a regular basis is that these men want to do a good job. They want to be good, and they want to find a different dimension to themselves to make the world better.
I
Love
love
And
that.
that.
that's kind of like what we have to help them do.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Omar, this conversation, one, so good, so rich, so long and deep, and all the things. I'm really just grateful for this opportunity to unpack things. Give us just the taste. You've got some big projects coming up. What can people expect to see from you here in the next coming months?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, we have the ASQ podcast, which is something that my wife and I do. We talk about a lot of these themes and mythology. I call it psycho spiritual. So we
Hmm.
talk a lot about that. In September, we are launching our first book. It is called A Soul's Quest. Thank you. A transformational approach to life, right? Because life is about how we approach it. How do we understand it? How do we approach it? And we talk in depth about three concepts: perspective, experience, and philosophy. So the first thing is creating a cosmic. I love the cosmos, as you can tell in the background. Creating a cosmic perspective to see our relationship to the cosmos, and gaining that idea of understanding that we are it, are one. And like Carl Sagan says, we are a way for the universe to know itself. And I really deeply believe in that, and that's kind of like goes into the who I am. From experience point of view, is how do we properly reflect on our lives experiences to really gain the lessons and the strength that builds that. Is like, I talk about cobalt was a demon rock. That's how they used to call it. But as people began to understand it, our society won't function without cobalt anymore, because it's such an essential element. And it's like that. We have to somewhat be refined internally, go through these stages to find ourselves. And philosophy is really about, I don't believe that one philosophy is the answer to life. You can't be stoic all the time, you know, and you can't be hedonistic all the time, and you can't be seeking power all the time. But it's all about figuring out how to do it, and then living from that inner essence of who you are, and helping people find that. So that's what the
Mm.
book is about. And those are the things that I'm working on right now. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Awesome.
awesome, Omar. So if people want to maybe get on an email list or
Sure.
follow that, where can they go?
Simply visit our website, asoulsquest.com. You can
Hmm.
follow us on all social media platforms. You look for the ASQ podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever. But asoulsquest.com, that's where you will find us.
And we'll put that link in the show notes so that it's really easy for you guys to find.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Omar, so much for joining us today. This has been just such a beautiful conversation. I feel like every conversation we had, I just walked away being like, oh, I feel enriched
Oh,
and
thank
like
you.
just deeply connected, and not in the how's the weather today kinds of conversations. I don't even know that I could know how to do small talk with you.
Yeah, we realized that at the conference we don't do small talk together, so I realized that too.
I love it.
And thank you
Thank
for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. It's so awesome to see you both again, and just being here. Thank you.
Oh, of
Thank
course.
you.
Until next time, everyone, we hope you guys go be freaking awesome.